Good evening. Welcome to Rose City Politics. It is August the 11th. Our regular panel tonight includes Doug Sartori coming to you from an election.
Yes, election fever is in the air. So I thought it would be a good time to bring everyone's attention back to the excellent 1999 Reese Witherspoon vehicle election.
Matthew Broderick in that as well, right?
Yep, that's right.
And I know your feelings on a Matthew Broderick, big fan.
Oh my God. I forgot that you hate Matthew Broderick. Yes.
I don't hate Matthew Broderick. We just have
Who hates Matthew Broderick?
No one does. I don't hate him. He just was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and you took a strong defense of him.
Every time the guy's name comes up, John needs to air dirty laundry. What do you make of that, Don?
That's a historical fact. Just saying, it doesn't get spoken about enough.
So, you have psychological problems.
All of our heroes have tragic flaws at times.
That's right.
We have
Matthew Broderick's tragic flaw is that he was in Godzilla.
100%.
That's fair.
That was unacceptable.
We can all agree on that one.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good one, though, to be perfectly honest. That was a banger.
No, it wasn't.
It was
it was not.
Maybe I've got just like rose-colored glasses on right now looking back on it.
Yeah.
Well, as you can hear, we also have Don Merrifield here. Don, how are you doing?
I'm coming what usually is the white void, but I don't know if you guys heard recently, I was hired by the city of Amherstburg, but now I'm in a holding cell. So it's just didn't really pan out well for me.
It's got a nice beige there and a bit of like, it's a gradient, so it doesn't look terrible.
Yeah, just don't look to the left. There's two axe murderers over there.
Well, I am John Lidke. This is Rose City Politics.
This is all going to make sense in a minute.
I'm coming to you live from Amherstburg Open Streets. What an amazing event. The streets are packed. Always are packed.
Very nice.
A lot of times in the photographs at the very least. But we've got a show that we put together, and then we've got the show that we're going to be doing right now. So we'll be getting right to that. But if you're listening already and you are a Patreon subscriber, thanks. If you're not, get to patreon.com/Rose City Politics. Help us out. Be sure to read us in print monthly in BizX Magazine. We're at bizxmagazine.com. We've got a brand new topic coming out for the September issue. We are talking about a bit of a sneak preview here, expected population growth. So, in the region. So keep that in the back of your head. And check us out on social media, like, share, and subscribe. And of course, we broadcast live on tape week after week, year after year of the pandemic, thanks to the kind support of Leuna 625, Building Better Communities. So we are going to jump right in tonight to set our focus on Amherstburg. And we've got some breaking news that we're going to be getting to, some drama coming out of town hall there in Amherstburg. We're waiting on a bit more to be coming in from some sources that we're following, as well as some other news stories to fully develop, or sources to develop it out. But we will jump in right now. There was a guest column in the Windsor Star that came out on the 7th titled "Open Air in Amherstburg Needs Adjusting, So Business Owners Won't Be Hurt." This was put out by the Waterfront Ice Cream, the Perch Pit, County Bliss Gift Store, Decole Designs, the Happier Camper, the Barbershop, Ricardo's, Rosa's, Caffeine & Co., and Precision Jewelers. Now, I'm not going to read the entire article, but I will get down to the gist of it. And I don't think I'm going to be doing any disservice here with having it reduced this way. It spoke about the challenges that downtown Amherstburg small business owners are facing. Of course, rising costs of products and services are one of them. COVID rules and restrictions and the ever-changing nature of them come up as well. But they address the inflexibility of the tourism department and town council to not only see concerns, but make changes that would help these businesses. And these businesses have brought up some issues surrounding the open air event specifically. Now, this was launched, I believe, last year during pandemic year 1, 2020, and it features shutting down the streets in a real full fashion in the downtown core there for pretty well most of the summer. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys. Regular occurrence Friday through Sunday. The streets shut down, towards the afternoon on Friday, closed all the way through on Sunday. I don't believe they really reopen until Monday. The business owners here are saying that they specifically need some more open outdoor space, more vehicular access. They're saying that they have business hours that run longer than the event it does, and that they have patrons who aren't able to park directly in front of their businesses. They complain that there's not enough programming at these events to actually lure people to the streets. They bring up a bit of a propaganda element, saying that social media posts actually only show the event when it's at full capacity and not what the regular situation is, which is a lot less foot traffic. And they said really it came down to the fact that town council has been, quote, too passive. And they said the reason that they view that is because of a lack of engagement. Now, certainly we can appreciate that here on Rose City Politics. We've been talking about an engagement process in the city in one way or another, I think for the last 3-4 episodes straight. There was a quote, though, that these business owners put down, and it did resonate with me. And I've reduced it here a bit to the core of it. Many of us have been here for decades, make up the foundation of the town, and are the very heart and soul that have helped shape our downtown. They're really just asking for more engagement. As I said, I can certainly appreciate that. I poo-pooed this story a little bit at the outset when I read it. I mean, these are very minimal issues, I think, to have at the end of the day. But when you're talking about really your whole world getting turned upside down here on a regular, ongoing basis, as a business owner, I can certainly appreciate how a lack of engagement and that outcome would be stressful, and wanting to, at least provide a bit of input towards the town council and the tourism operators that have made this happen. Doug, I want to bring your voice in here first, though. You're our resident Amherstburg guru on the podcast. You know the inside history sort of what shaped the town into like where it's at right now. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. What's your take on this?
Yeah, thanks, John. You're quite right. I grew up in Amherstburg, attended school in Amherstburg, and in the 90s, for a little while, I lived in this part of town. I lived in downtown Amherstburg, and I think that's important context, and I want to bring it up because what people might not realize who are not from Amherstburg is just what a turnaround there has been in the downtown in the last 25 years. In the mid 90s, downtown Amherstburg was, a retail strip that was not always the best attended or the most successful, a couple of restaurants, and it was not a thriving and healthy downtown, at least in my opinion. Fast forward to 2020, 2021, it's one of the most vibrant urban centers in our region. And I think that you do have to look at some of the businesses like the Waterfront Ice Cream Parlor. These folks have been there for decades. They have been in that location. They have been there in the bad years. They have been there in the good years. So, I think it's important to listen to folks who have not only have skin in the game today, but who have been around for a long time. So even though maybe on the surface, my instant reaction would be not that different from yours, John. I really enjoyed Windsor's Open Streets events. I really found them to be terrific. I think street closures are really good for urban centers. But I read that letter with interest because it's hard to read that letter and not think that the writers have a point and have something to say that's worth thinking about. And it's interesting to me for a couple of reasons, but I want to pose this question and give someone else a chance to get in as we develop the discussion. Do you folks remember any kind of groundswell of complaint from business owners downtown about open streets in Windsor when it happened?
No, I mean, that was right when I first opened up Higher Limits, actually, the first year of it. And no, there was I think support for it. I remember I was at the council meeting. There was, I think, just overwhelming support. But again, the difference being is that it was for one day and one afternoon.
Well, that's true. And I was operating an organization. I was your neighbor, John, in those days. And I was operating an organization on Olette, and our street was closed at that time. And what I remember about it is how much every business, at least every business that I was aware of and that was visible to me, was taking part in open streets and finding a way to help actually create that programming. So I do wonder what the day-to-day is like in open air Amherstburg. I think some really good points have been raised here that deserve a debate. And I don't think that it's a good idea for the forces of the majority on town council in Amherstburg to sort of sweep this under the rug and dismiss it. I think that these are some fair points that need to be addressed. I'm not saying that these folks are right about everything, but I do think that they're opening up an important debate that should continue. What do you think, Don?
Well, I didn't actually grow up in Amherstburg, but my family now lives out there. So I've been downtown Amherstburg a few times in the last few months for these open street deals. When you go there, they're really focused. The majority of the businesses that are taking advantage of the open streets are basically restaurants and bars. You're just sitting out on the patio having a drink while people wander around. So I can understand, the barber shops and kind of the non-restaurant based businesses being upset because it is difficult. If you want to, I've driven out there and it's hard to park out there because, it's not a big, Amherstburg is like 4 square blocks basically. So I think it's just growing pains. You're getting a lot of people coming into the area to go to this event. And I think it has been relatively successful, which is why I think they just keep doing it week after week. But it's really focused on, a select type of activity, and basically it's dining and drinking and wandering around and talking to each other. So yeah, if you're not involved in that kind of business, I could see it being a pain because they're right. I mean, last time I went out with my dad and his wife to dinner, and yeah, we just parked at some strip mall that had nothing to do with it. It wasn't even open at the time. So yeah, these businesses are losing their parking. Their customers are probably getting irritated, which could at the end of the day drive them somewhere else. So I understand. I think this is really, like I said, just a lot of growing pains. It's been a very, I think, positive, successful event. And as you said, Doug, I don't think people realize, if you haven't been out there, and certainly the last 5 or 10 years, Amherstburg's turning into quite a little tourist destination. The town has really been revitalized. There's some people down there like Richard Petty putting a lot of money in downtown to make it, more attractive to people to come visit. So it's like anything, when things are going well, there's always going to be something negative on it. And I think the letter was right. I mean, I know the lady who owns the coffee shop out there, and she's a very smart woman. She's a real estate agent. Obviously she's smart. So that's just a blatant plug right there. So yeah, I think, we talk about this every day that, sometimes town councilors and mayors aren't really open to listening to what people have to say. And I think that's really what the complaint is. I think it can work for everybody, but yeah, I think there probably does have to be some changes because, like I said, this is really just going out to dinner and sitting on the patio and staring at the people walking by. So the other businesses really aren't getting the advantage of it.
There's no question that factional politics in Amherstburg are part of this story. You mentioned Richard Petty, who has come into town relatively recently. I believe he is a resident of Boblo Island, and had a big impact. He's gotten really engaged in the community's politics. He was part of the founding group that founded the Community Foundation out in Amherstburg. He has opened a bookstore in the town, so he certainly had a big impact. And I think that there is some alignment with different people on different sides of this issue, with the sort of the council majority versus the council minority in Amherstburg. And it's a little bit of a funhouse mirror of the experience that we have in Windsor. Because I tend to think that the Amherstburg majority is a little bit more on the progressive side, whereas Windsor's majority seems to be a little more on the conservative side. So it's always interesting, I think, to test to test the way that you think about things when the shoe maybe is on the other foot a little bit. But I want to broaden this topic out and compare it to compare this letter and why I think it's constructive, even though I don't necessarily agree with every little bit of it. Compare this letter to that recent Globe and Mail piece about how trucks are terrible. People who drive trucks are idiots who hate children and run them over, and they should all die like pigs in hell. I think I am approximating
Well,
what
okay.
that piece said.
Before we go too far down this path, I would just like to state I recently just purchased a Ford F-150 about 2 weeks ago. So I am now one of those truck idiots who are trying to kill all your children. So
Right.
let's just take it easy right now.
But okay, Don, well, I knew you were that type, but this is the this is the point that I want to make. You know, I read that Globe and Mail piece and I just shook my head. Even though I agree, I think with some of the points that the author was trying to make about the proliferation of large vehicles in urban settings, and you know, how much that has done to impact pedestrian safety. Like, I think there are good points to be made there. But when I read that piece, I just shook my head because it's just such inflammatory culture war bait, and it does not lead to a useful discussion. You know, it's very polarizing. It was almost a troll. It got everybody angry on both sides and arguing with one another. And I thought it was not very constructive, even though I'm in some sympathy with the main point of the piece. So now contrast that with this Windsor Star guest column, where, I don't totally agree with the authors. I don't think that they're necessarily 100% right, but I really was impressed with the way that that letter was written. It was respectful. It was not inflammatory. It does not level accusations of terrible improprieties or moral evil to the people on the other side. It just kind of said, hey, these are some issues that we're seeing with these events, and we would like to have a better conversation. And so I really applaud that. I applaud the tone of that letter, and I think it's it's something that I really wanted to call out, not even so much on the substance of it as on the style of it, and the way that I think that kind of engagement can lead to better discussions.
Well, it's kind of a high class problem to have, because what the real issue is the success of this event. Whether sometimes they say it's not as busy as it is on other times, at the end of the day, I think the whole concept and the event has been successful, and it's really just about the other businesses who really aren't getting the advantage of it right now, just want to be involved, they want to be included, and they want to be part of the game. So it's I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense, and you have to listen. And it's just, everybody wants a piece of the pie now. So it's a good event. It's a good thing that's happening in Amherstburg. And we've discussed this on the little bit of Amherstburg discussions we have on this show over the many years. Amherstburg is an interesting place. Like you say, you grew up there. There's an old school mentality that this is our Amherstburg. Don't mess it. Leave it alone. We like it just the way it is. But you've seen with people like Richard Petty and some other business owners kind of all decided to focus that Amherstburg's going to be the place to be, that a lot of changes have happened. And I think that's just, there's going to be some growing pains on that. Just the traditional Amherstburg people, quote unquote, they're maybe not ready for this. One of the aspects of people living in Amherstburg is, well, I don't want to live in the city. I don't want to live in Windsor. I don't want to live where there's a lot of people. And their town is turning into that because it's becoming a destination, not just with this kind of thing. I mean, the number of subdivisions being built out there now, the growth out there is incredible relative to the rest of the area. So there's going to be some issues with the people who, just don't want things to change, and the people who want to see things progress and just expand on the process that's going on right now.
So John has been pretty quiet these past few minutes, and I want to just call out. I've been watching out of the corner of my eye the show prep document that we all share and look at, and he has been furiously creating a story for us to talk about the other stuff that's going on in Amherstburg. And before I pass it over to you, John, to get into that, I just want to say we cannot talk about Amherstburg without me wanting to make this point: rename the damn town, people. It's the right thing to do. Rename the town.
That's another topic for sure.
We've talked about it before. We'll definitely be talking about it again. But
Litkeyville. There we go. Nailed
hey,
it.
I'll take it. I don't think that there would be anyone upset with that decision, and there will certainly be no letters to the editor.
Actually, this would be perfect for how this show started. When I grew up in LaSalle, which is almost Amherstburg, one of the big farming families out there was the Brodericks. So we could call it like Broderick Town, and Matthew Broderick could be like the poster child for the guy who MCs all the parades and stuff.
Oh, I'm gonna have to do so many comments before events, though.
Well, you're not going to be invited. I can guarantee.
Oh, well, yeah. Gosh darn. Okay, let's get into this story here. Really interesting story. We don't often do breaking news on this show, let alone get ones that are as juicy as this story is.
Guarantee you that.
Windsor police escort several Amherstburg senior managers out of town hall. Windsor Star's Trevor Wilhelm put this one out furiously himself this afternoon. I did my best to get this down into a format that we can talk about here. So Amherstburg's lawyer has taken over the duties of CEO John Michelli after Windsor police were called in to walk out senior managers from town hall. Mayor DiCarlo confirmed that 3 employees were escorted off town property on Monday, but wouldn't confirm whom or why, only saying that town lawyer Susan Hirota has been temporarily assigned to Michelli's work. Quote from Mayor DiCarlo, nobody's been arrested. I'm going to editorialize a little bit right here in the middle of it. If you're having to put out a statement saying nobody's been arrested, wow, things have really gone off the rails. It's just that was a quote that just left me stunned. Now, Windsor Star tried to get it in touch with Michelli, as did CTV Windsor. He hasn't been in touch with, didn't return calls, and Windsor Star says that his last known cell phone number is now out of service. Windsor police would only confirm their presence. They directed any inquiries to the town itself. Now, the mayor, again, he was asked who, why, what's going on, and said human resource rules prevented him from confirming if anyone had been suspended. Additionally, he wouldn't confirm or deny reports that property, including electronics, was seized, saying that that was an HR issue. He put out a lengthy statement that we've sort of addressed in what's been talked about above. But one quote that really did stand out, of course, it's not surprising, but was, quote, we're presently doing our due diligence in reviewing some issues that were brought to our attention. So this, it sounds surprising here to have this kind of a thing happening so quickly. Now, let's leave it right there for right now. We can all take a little breath and go, wow. I mean, Michelli was the City of Windsor Executive Director of Parks and Facility Ops before moving over to Amherstburg. So he's well known in this region. Doug, are you and Don, are you guys as surprised as me to read a quote, nobody's been arrested? I mean, police walking into town hall, walking people out of town hall.
We haven't seen anything like this in our region in almost 20 years. The last thing that I can remember, and of course, this is all very new. Not only has nothing been proven, but there are huge clouds around what is even going on. And I want to be really clear before I go on, because before I draw parallels to other stuff, nobody on this show, except maybe Don, will let Don say whatever inflammatory stuff he wants, but nobody on this show is drawing conclusions or inviting the audience to draw conclusions. Having said that, the MFP leasing scandal in the early part of the 2000s hit Windsor and several other municipalities in Ontario, as a matter of fact, and it had a tremendous political impact. And I think that's one of the places that I want to go with this conversation. If you think about the impact of MFP on Windsor politics, it probably, more than any other single thing, is created the political landscape that we have today. Eddie Francis became mayor on the coattails of the MFP scandal and its fallout at the city. If you remember, Mike Grasson's caricature of Eddie Francis was the mayor in a Boy Scout uniform. And I think that that was alluding not only to his youth, but to his squeaky clean image, and how much of an appetite there was for that in the city of Windsor after MFP. So I just want to bring that out because, you know, this story is shocking, but depending on what direction this goes, the political fallout for the town of Amherstburg could be immense. And here we are in Windsor, you know, decades on from the last big issue like this in our town. And you can see looking back what a big impact it's had.
Yeah, it's look, none of us, including myself, know really what's going on out in Amherstburg. We're just reading through the story. But I agree with what John said. If the quote coming out is, "Hey, settle down, nobody's been arrested," you might as well just add "yet" to the end of that, because it's probably not going to end well. Or there's reason for people to suspect that someone possibly could get arrested. You know, it's like when someone brings up something and you didn't even ask the question, you think there's obviously something to hide there. But
it's like when like your girlfriend asks you like, what were you doing? It's just like, well, I wasn't out with another woman. What are you talking about?
That's right.
It's like, whoa, really
I-
defensive are we?
Well, exactly. That's 100% what it is, right? So, but you know, going off what Doug said, you know, things like this, you know, can end one of two ways. That you know, the scandal, if there is going to be a scandal, if there's going to be something out there, is obviously something everybody gets all excited about. But how it, the outcome and what happens after the fact can actually be a positive thing. You know, you brought up the MFP scandal. There were some issues with the contract that was awarded for the 400 building. You know, so changes were made to make sure that these kind of things don't happen again. So whatever's going out there in Amherstburg, whatever it is, and hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully everybody gets their job back and nobody did anything wrong, and we can all go back to just, you know, arguing about politics on Facebook and COVID stuff. Even if there was some bad stuff, you know, a good result can come out of it long term. So, you know, let's just hope for the best out there. And I'm as curious as anyone to see what's actually going on.
What do you take with I mean, the implication I think here in the piece is that, you know, his electronics have been seized. I think, you know, read between the lines here. They say that Windsor Star says that his last cell phone number was out of service. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you got a company phone that's been disconnected from its provider, not only taken from you, presumably, I'm really reading between the lines here. This is not what it says. I mean, we're obviously looking at a pretty serious issue. Is there any musing that you could even? I mean, you guys have more experience in this realm than I do, just because of the beauty of
In
my
what,
youth.
being criminals, John? Is that what you're saying?
I was gonna say I'm just so much younger than the two of you, but yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
we can just classify you both as criminals,
Yeah.
I suppose, Don, if you want to go that route.
Weren't
I
you
mean,
the guy breaking all the cannabis laws for years and years and years?
I didn't break one law, and I stopped once a loophole was plugged. We'll say that immediately stopped. I mean, what can we presume though would have occurred here for police to have to walk into town hall? Like, at what level is the bar for, you know, not only get the hell out and we'll call you back, but
Yeah.
no, we've called Windsor Police, you know, the Amherstburg detachment of Windsor Police, and you're being removed from the premises. In a regular business, you've had to have done something so egregious to get police involved.
And they're grabbing
s-
your electronics. So,
But let me give you a counter example, because I think that
Sure.
that's not always the case. After the 2014 election in Windsor, there were some pretty serious allegations made.
I was so hoping you were going to say the last time I got escorted out of the building by the police.
No, I wasn't going to talk about that, Don. We aren't going to talk
sorry.
about that.
We'll cut that out.
But there were some very serious allegations of electoral fraud laid after the 2014 election. And there was an obligation on the part of the police to take that seriously. If you wanted to spin the story that way, you could have talked about how police attended City Hall in Windsor and seized ballot boxes, because I believe that they did. And after a lengthy court process, it turned out that those allegations were completely unfounded. The people involved in leveling those allegations ended up with their reputations in tatters. Many political careers were ended before they started because people were associated with that nonsense. So I only bring that up just to point out, John, that sometimes people can create smoke without there being fire, and I think that's an important point to remember. The police have an obligation in our society to take what they see as credible allegations seriously, and they have a responsibility to follow them up. So, I don't know that we can draw conclusions from that. The only thing that I will say is, because it does seem like there is, obviously, um, uh, John Michelli is somehow involved here. He's been on the show before, but there's somehow there is a relation to this incident with Michelli, because he's currently not serving as the CAO of the town of Amherstburg. And so I just want to point out that he has been a lightning rod for controversy. It's not something that it's not something that he has shied away from. There were, I think you've got some stuff in the show notes here. He has sued folks who leveled serious criticism at him on social media and in public in Amherstburg. Very, very much an elbows up kind of bureaucrat, does not fit the mold of a typical bureaucrat that you see in our region. Normally they're not nearly as colorful as Mr. Michelli, and don't conduct themselves with the same sort of big presence. I can't think of another CAO in our region in my memory, with the possible exception of the incredibly flamboyant Hillary Payne, who cut such a big figure across the town, and was such a factor in the politics of the town. So, we don't know enough yet to draw conclusions or make definitive statements, but I think that there is some continuity between the way that Michelli conducts himself and where this has landed. It's there's an awful lot of grievances and an awful lot of people out there who have would love to see Mr. Michelli humbled in some way. So that may well turn out to be a factor in all this before it's done.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember when Michelli was hired out there. Prior to that, I mean, Amherstburg was a financial poop show, for like saying it a nice way. There were a huge financial problems out there. The town was basically going bankrupt, and that was just through years and years and years of mismanagement. When he came in, I mean, whatever is going on now aside, he really got the town turned around financially and pointed in the right direction. So again, I don't know what's going on now, but I think if you look on the broad term of thing, Amherstburg politics and Amherstburg, the way Amherstburg Town Hall, City Hall has been run for decades has always been somewhat way too entertaining and not handled properly. So you're right. I think there's a lot of people who would like to see him fail, because I think there's a lot of people who were upset the way he was brought in. And, the only advice I'll give people in the future is burner phones. People use burner phones. Don't use your own phone.
Okay, Don. Oddly specific advice.
I saw it in a movie once. I think it was a Matthew Broderick movie, actually.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it has nothing to do with the fact that he was on Family Feud, right?
Probably not.
Did they win?
Yeah.
I think they did. I think they did win.
So it could be deep-seated jealousy.
Could be, yeah.
Probably not.
That Steve Harvey money is really big.
We are going to be continuing to follow this story as it comes out. There's not much more speculation that we can do with it, though, other than just wait and see. So we're going to move on to the next topic of the night. And thank you for those kind words there, though, Doug, at the beginning, because I was doing my best to furiously just put something together so we could address it as quickly as possible.
Pretty impressive. John Lidke is a media gem, and we're very lucky to have him.
Oh, thank you. we're touching back onto an issue that we've done 2 weeks already. Took a break on it last week with the live show, which I'm sure all of you listened to. Ontario on the Move, Windsor on the Move. Dr. Mike Moffat was at Maiden Lane. It was a great episode. You're going to want to listen to it. It's about population growth in the region. We've been talking about, though, this now derailed anti-racism project, and Mayor Dilkens has decided to speak about it, if you will. This is a CBC article. It came out a couple days ago. We hadn't gotten a chance, though, to address it specifically. Mayor Dilkens said that he's still committed, but unsure how council will move forward with this anti-racism initiative after the Multicultural Council of Windsor Essex announced that they pulled out. Now, as we talked about on the show before, the chairs of the Windsor Diversity Committee and the Black Council of Windsor Essex both voiced strong criticism of the consultation process and, being accused of being consulted and listed as a proponent and a spoken to member, when in fact they both felt that they hadn't been. Mayor Dilkens has continued with his, I don't know, what do you even call this at this point now? Just, it's not even deflection. It's attacking the people who levy criticisms themselves. This is a quote from the mayor. It's just very disappointing that there is this amount of sort of hate swirling around that universe when everyone should be supporting an anti-racism initiative, and that there are just a few skeptics out there who are trying to derail the great work that the Multicultural Council does. I feel like that's the joke I made earlier. Like, I wasn't out on a date with another person. Like, what are you talking about? Like, the defense here is so strong, it doesn't apply. It's just the flip side of this. What sort of hate is swirling around here? Who's not supporting anti-racism initiatives? Who's trying to derail the Multicultural Council? The answer is no one. It didn't happen, and this is all just made up. Now, to set the stage here a bit, you all know this. It was $200,000. It was awarded by council. The diversity committee chair, Peter Ija, was angered by how this went down, said that some committee members had considered resignation. Council had actually already approved a similar project to be led by the diversity committee in partnership with the Windsor Essex Local Immigration Partnership, which, raised the issue here, as you've already directed us to do this endeavor, and now you're going and awarding $200,000 to another initiative here. Mayor Dilkens is again rebuffing any criticism of this. He says, I consulted with 16 different organizations, and says that no one was left out of this consultation process, even though, the Diversity Committee and the Black Council of Windsor Essex both say they absolutely were. My favorite quote from Mayor Dilkens, though, in a while that I've heard is, I've never met this man, said Mayor Dilkens, referring to the chair of Windsor's Diversity Committee. The mayor said, I've never met this man. He's never reported complaints to anyone at the city. He went straight to the media. Now, Ija was elected chair of the Diversity Committee May 14th. Of last year, 2020. I left a little hang on there just in case. Now, listen, we're in a pandemic, so, maybe you can't get together face to face, but the mayor did acknowledge that he had a conversation with this man on the phone, and then goes on to say to the media, presumably 8 to 12 months later, I've never met the man. Well, then who did you think you were speaking with on the phone? And why did you go say that he had your buy-in? I'm doing enough of making fun of this issue, Doug. I'm going to bring you in to just get this more on track, because while I'm mocking it and making fun of it, it's a very serious issue. We've spoken about why it's so serious, but let's let you get your voice in, because I can't guarantee that I won't keep making fun of the mayor right now.
Well, I think there's a lot of room for mockery on this, and I think your instincts are solid, John. Listen, Mayor Dilkens has a very standard approach when he faces criticism. He attempts to marginalize the critics. He undermines their credibility. He makes accusations that are unreasonable about their motives. He makes accusations about their approach and their motivations. This is 100% standard Dilkins response to being challenged. I would suggest that the way that he responds, obviously there is a political component here. The language has gotten more practiced. He has gotten better at crafting and delivering that message. But I also think that this has a lot to do with who the mayor is, and how he conducts himself. And this is really the heart of so many problems that we face in this city. Very clearly, the consultation efforts on this were lacking. The very organizations and stakeholders who have the most interest on this issue and who you absolutely must get on side if you're going to make headway on it are the groups that are crying foul. And I think that that is what makes Mayor Dilkins' words ring a little hollow. But I want to call attention to some specific words that he used. It's very disappointing that there is this amount of hate. Okay, let's stop right there. Using the word hate in this context, in the context of an initiative that is designed to deal with issues of systemic racism and anti-Black racism in our community, using the word hate is extremely inappropriate in this context. I don't think that you should be taking the most prominent stakeholder groups on this file, the multicultural, the diversity committee, and the Black Council of Windsor Essex. These are two groups that have a lot to say, and that whose concerns should be given a bit of weight. And he's characterizing them as just a few skeptics. Where have we heard that before? Well, we've heard it every single time someone has the audacity to question Mayor Dilkins' vision and execution. Well, Mayor Dilkins, you're not perfect. You do not have a monopoly on truth. Your perspective is not the only perspective. You need to learn to listen to the people in your community, even if their perspective is different, even if you don't like what they have to say. The mayor's attempt to take this issue, wrap it all up in a bow, and turn it into a nice little communications win instead of seriously addressing the issue and digging into the challenges and issues that we really have in this community is how he got there, and he deserves every bit of flack that he is getting for it.
Can I just expand on that? I don't want to interrupt you right now, but it wasn't just hate. He said specifically hate swirling around that universe. And I want to focus on that universe part.
Yeah.
Like that specifically. And I'm going to try not to go too far and hit a third rail here and, put words or ascribe specifics into what the mayor was saying. I think he just, potentially spoke a little too quickly. But when you're saying that this sort of hate swirling around that universe, well, what universe is he speaking about? Of course, he's speaking specifically about the Black Council of Windsor Essex and about the Diversity Committee of the City of Windsor. Two groups that exist to serve marginalized communities, if you will. To say that there's hate swirling around in those communities, again, I don't think that that's what the mayor said, but it's very easy to interpret it exactly in such a way. It goes to what you're talking about, Doug, that reflexive nature of him, whether it's this, whether it's just a couple people who tried to throw the 80 Knox bid into disarray, or any other of the number of things that have been put forward by the mayor and have been honed now. I do agree with you, especially with having, sort of new communications teams coming on board in his office, new chief of staff that's been able to help to hone that message. But it's this reflexive nature that the mayor shows where you really see how he puts his foot in his mouth but I think it also explains how we get into these situations as a whole. What's your take?
Yeah, I think so. I think that um, Mayor Dilkins doesn't want things to go in a way that might lead to problems, challenges, or political liabilities down the road. I think that the potential for this particular issue to be a problem at the city is high. We had a show dedicated to the police use of force report a few months ago. It was a pretty one-sided show. We had some critics on the show, and we did not have anyone from the police on the show. We asked them, they chose not to. Fair enough, that's their choice. But you know, the things that the city directly controls or at one level removed has a lot of influence over. Mayor is the chair of the police board. There is clearly a conversation to be had about the relationship of the police to some communities in Windsor, including the Black community. There's a conversation to have there. I don't think the mayor wants to have that conversation at all. There's a conversation to have about city administration and whether or not there is systemic racism plays a role in certain policies or in the way that certain things are done in the city of Windsor. I don't think that Mayor Dilkins wants to have that conversation at all. Go down the list. I think that there are a number of ways that something like this, something like dealing with racism in Windsor, could turn into a communications headache for Mayor Dilkins, could alienate the people that he counts on for his personal political support. There's no secret or mystery that Mayor Dilkins lands on the conservative side and has been increasingly identifying himself with partisan conservative messaging at the provincial and federal level. I don't think that this issue is a winner for him. This is something that he wanted to control, lest it get out of control and become a liability. And I think he's being made to pay a price by some of the folks who have a personal and vital interest on this file. I think he's paying a price for trying to manage it because some people, some organizations did not want to play that game. That is my personal view. That's my view of the landscape of this whole thing. And I think that it could have been done completely differently. And I think a little bit more political courage, a little bit more willingness to do the right thing, whether it benefits you politically or maybe it represents a political risk. If that was the path that Mayor Dilkins had chosen, and let's not forget, this was run out of his office. The money sat in his office. The initiative was stage managed completely out of the mayor's office. This was his dance, and he decided how this was going to go, and this is where it landed. And the only person in the city who is responsible for where this is and how and all of the disappointment that's out there on it is Mayor Dilkins himself.
Yeah, I'll let you come in, Don, but I wanted to make a quick point here about it. With something as important an issue as anti-racism and trying to actually address the issues of systemic racism that exist in our community. There's certain times that you can BS your way through a consultation process. It's easy enough to think what the smaller the impact of the issue, the less the risk for it. The bigger the issue, the bigger the risk for it. I guess, I wonder about why did they think in the mayor's office? Why did he think? Why did the team that was working on this actually think that they could pull a fast one over these two groups and actually publicly say that they had the buy-in, the nerve to suggest that? I mean, listen, if you're going to say we're going to go spend $200,000 to enhance ice cream shop patios, and then say, we had the buy-in of, Dairy Delight or something. That's probably one that you can go out on a limb on, and you can deal with the buy-in after the public announcement and work it out. Again, that's very crass and probably not the way it should be done, but that's one that you could do with like little to no risk and, the rewards there. With something like this, when it comes down to marginalized groups saying that there's systemic racism in our communities, that they're feeling as if they're ignored, they want a seat at the table to be addressing these very issues, having actually had this assigned to them and having worked through it, to then be treated in this very way. It's like you did the thing they're complaining about, but said that they're at the table for it. It's just, what disrespect and what a highlight of, I'll say it, incompetence coming out of the mayor's office. Just, he deserves everything that's coming. 3 weeks in a row with this story. It's not going to be going anywhere. There's going to have to be a debate coming forward to council. What the hell do we do, you guys? How do we make this right? And I think the only way that you can actually make this right now is to, hand it off to the groups and let them do the thing that they wanted to do that you didn't want to do. At this point, the football's too hot. It's on fire.
I don't see the mayor backing down, and I'll give you a chance to get in, Don. I just wanted to make one point, and that is that the MCC as an organization here, I think, really got a raw deal, not from the critics, but from the city and from the mayor's office. This is also a pattern with Mayor Dilkins, deploying people and organizations as political shields. We've seen him do this again and again, and I wonder when people are going to stop picking up the phone when the mayor's office is calling with such a fantastic opportunity for you. But the MCC, really got caught in the crossfire on this one, and they've taken heat that they probably don't deserve for whether they called the mayor or the mayor called them. We don't know, because we heard different stories on that. But they do not deserve the level of heat that they're taking. He's right on that. But who put them there? Who put them in the crossfire in a situation where the consultation was completely half-baked and people were going to be pissed off? Sorry, Don, I got in your way there. I know you're raring to talk on this.
That's all right. This is usually the kind of topic that could be a precursor of my last show ever. I think, I'm just kidding. Something John said, his ice cream analogy, I think, even though he didn't know it, is probably the most important thing that was said on this whole show, aside from the Matthew Broderick rant at the beginning, is when you look at it that way. John brought up the analogy of, if they were throwing $200,000 at some kind of ice cream bullshit, that blah, 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 blah. The reality is that is how the mayor is approaching this topic. He's approaching this as an irritant that he just wants to go away and doesn't want to deal with. So his solution was to throw some bullshit nominal amount of money at it, say, look at me, I'm doing things to solve racism. And he's taking it as serious as John's ice cream analogy, because he doesn't take this topic seriously. And maybe it's not him. Maybe it's the powers that be down at the city don't. I mean, this has been an ongoing problem forever. I mean, racism has been here much longer than I've been alive, and it's still here no matter how much, people like the mayor want to pretend it's not. His response that you guys brought up earlier about these angry blanks swirling around these groups is the perfect example of blatant racism from an old white guy who just says, when things don't go my way and I'm getting attacked by anti-racism groups, it's the angry black people who are attacking me, the poor white man snowflake who's all very sensitive about everything right now. What his comments are just blatantly racist. That's what it comes down to. And he's not self-aware enough to realize it. And that's the problem. That is the biggest problem. Like I say, aside from the throwing the nominal bullshit amount of money at this thing, his defense of I never met this guy and I don't even know this guy is just absurd beyond all levels. This is the equivalent of when they threw accusations at Donald Trump that he was anti-Semitic and said, well, I can't be anti-Semitic. My accountants are Jewish. I mean, he literally said stuff. And this is the same kind of response the mayor's throwing out. Don't laugh. They're just funny, but it's so look, the reality is, look, I'm a 53-year-old white guy, probably middle to upper middle class, and I'm probably very similar in age, upbringing, and even thought process. We even have the same hairstyle as the mayor. So obviously his life and I are kind of on that same path from beginning to end. When topics like systemic racism and the whole slew of other topics we have to do with marginalized communities, the job of 53 or 54-year-old white guys, whether you're in power, whether you're not in power, is to shut up and listen, because you will never understand the situation because you're not in it. I don't care how empathetic you believe you are. You're never going to understand the situation from the perspective of those marginalized communities. The problem is the mayor likes to think he's the smartest guy in the room. He's going to micromanage everything. And the fact that this is turned into basically a political puppet show is, again, part of the whole problem. Nobody's taking this seriously. The mayor's not taking it seriously. When he gets pushback on it, it turns into this big political show that means nothing. And at the end of the day, the issue that they were, quote unquote, trying to pretend to deal with is just getting pushed away with a couple $100,000. And we'll discuss this next time an election comes around. And hopefully I can get votes from the marginalized communities that I really don't care about. So, I mean, I'm sure the lawsuits are going to start flying in any second now with all this stuff I've said. But at the end of the day, again, this is, as white people, look, we're three white guys sitting here talking about this. When you're talking about marginalized communities and racism, whether it's whatever the myriad of topics are, we don't have a say in this. Our job is to listen. The only reason the mayor can comment is because he's in power and he's the one that controls the situation. He should have just turned this over to these communities right from the get-go and said, look, just do what you want. Tell me what you need me to do. Tell me when solutions are come up with how we can address this problem. But instead, like you said, his natural instinct is to be, I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'll handle this. I'm going to fix this. And, at the end of the day, he doesn't give a shit because he wasn't taking this seriously at all to begin with.
Well, I agree with, I think, everything that you said. You used a few words that I don't think I would have gone as far as you went, but, and any comments can be directed to donmerrifield.com, donmerrifieldjr.com.
No, you can call my dad. It's fine.
I guess what I wanted to say was, what would it look like if we were actually going to look into anti-racism and systemic racism in Windsor? And a couple of things popped up in my head. First was a CBC story came out in 2017. Photo with Windsor's mayor, police chief, called a PR victory for soldiers of Odin. This is in reference to a photograph that was taken at an event organized by the mayor's office in support of the 75-year-old woman, Anne Widholm, who was attacked by a young person who was high on psychedelic mushrooms and was largely turned into by something that a lot of people in the community viewed as not so much a support walk, but it really became it became something different. I'll only say it became something to the point that the leader of the Soldiers of Odin felt comfortable enough attending this event for some reason and decided to take a photograph with his arms flanked around Chief Al Frederick and Mayor Drew Dilkins. This was obviously a huge blunder. I don't expect the mayor to know who the leader of a localized hate group is. I would hope maybe the chief of police would. That, that may come up in terms of what you're looking at. It's not the best image, but I think, you could brush it off. It was an event. Maybe it was organized in not the best way, but you could explain your way out of a situation like that. But we go a bit further to it, and now where's Chief Frederick? Well, the chief has been replaced by a candidate who was absolutely more diverse than an old bald white guy, another old bald white guy. Don, we also have at the police, Windsor Police, diversity officers. Both of the newest diversity officer was just sworn in recently. Those are nice PR stories. shows what we're doing. We have an African American serving as the diversity officer. We have a new police chief. Look at what we've done. We've addressed the issues in this community. As you said, Doug, though, we did that show on use of force in the community by Windsor Police. And what did it show? It showed that nothing's changed. It showed that use of force is still used disproportionately upon visible minorities, upon ethnic minorities. Very disproportionately, to the tune of, I think, 25% against upwards of 25% against Indigenous people, even though they only made upwards of 2.8 to 4% of our community. So the point being that I'm saying is we've got the tapestries of we're doing something, and that leads into exactly what this program was. The tapestry of we're doing something. We're getting into an election year coming out. Look what we've done. We created this group. We gave it to the MCC. We had $200,000 that we gave out. We gave out 4 scholarships. We changed 4 people's lives. We're truly ending racism here in Windsor. So anyways, please do make sure you mark your ballots accordingly, because Windsor, 4th most ethnically diverse city in Canada. What more is there that we could really be doing here? Nothing. There's not much more. I mean, it's all bullshit, of course, but we all know the vast majority of people don't read news stories in the Windsor Star, let alone read news stories beyond the headline or dive into the actual issue. So it's easy to put out the window curtains, if you will, and show that we're doing something when in fact we're not actually doing it. And that's what this initiative was. And that's why it's just so offensive to put words in the mouths of these groups and to continue now an offensive. He could have, what an easy win it would have been for the mayor's office to say, we made a mistake. We thought that by having the phone calls that we had, that was a meaningful consultation. We're in COVID. We thought that you would understand that, we're trying to just get something going. And once we're out of COVID, we're going to be getting together in bigger groups and blah, blah, blah. What an easy win. But this mayor, again, going back to that reflexiveness, just refuses to admit wrong, only wants to see things through his own lens. And in a situation here where you have 2 groups that came forward saying, hey, we're really offended and hurt here, the answer is no, you're wrong. And why do you hate me? We deserve better in Windsor.
Can I, and I know we want to wrap the show up, but that was such a well-made point, John. And I just want to follow up on that, because there is another element here that I think needs to be addressed. And that is that we don't have a critical media in this town. There is a very limited appetite to be critical of Mayor Dilkens or anything that's coming out of City Hall. There's a very limited appetite to even give a reasonable hearing to those critical voices. And I think that you can see that even in this story. This story came from CBC, which is probably the best outlet in town in terms of trying to have some level of fair reporting around what happens at City Hall.
They have nothing to lose.
Right. Because, this story was covered by other media, but nobody besides CBC wanted to break it. CBC dug on this. Imagine if we didn't have CBC in this town, and all of that to say that, part of the reason why these tactics are effective is that there is a very limited appetite to challenge the mayor in any way from our local media. And folks, if you think that protecting the powerful and making them feel good is your job, I gotta say I fundamentally disagree.
Yeah, it's almost like, if aside from CBC, who is kind of nationally funded, so they're in a little bit of a different situation. If you really want information from the local media on topics like this, you can almost hear the people just saying Bueller, Bueller. Like I wrapped that all up. That was
nice.
Pretty good. Eh?
Nice. Bringing it back to MB. Very nice.
There you go, man. There you go. We set the tone.
I like the bow right there. That was nice. The whole package has been fully wrapped up. That is the show. I mean, that was really, really good of you, Don. I'm impressed by that ability.
I'm here to entertain, man.
Our regular panel tonight included Doug Sartori, Don Merrifield Jr., and myself, John Lidke. Thank you for listening to Rose City Politics. Please do consider subscribing to us on Patreon at patreon.com/Rose City Politics. We are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We love to engage. We love it when you like, share, and you subscribe as well. And I've been saying it as a joke, but we've been able to broadcast live on tape week after week throughout the pandemic, year after year, thanks to the kind support of Leuna 625, Building Better Communities. Thank you so much to them, and thank you so much to you guys for listening. If there's a topic that you want us to be going a little bit more in depth about, shoot us a message. We'll try to fit it into the schedule. And if there's a topic that you absolutely need to have us address, that's where you sign up on Patreon, and it forces us to have to do at least a little bit on that topic. So what do you want to talk about? It's up to you. We will be back next week, and we will look forward to it. Hope you do too.